Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Tinnitus Talk. I'm really happy to have Joey Remenyi with me today. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you so much for doing this.
Hi, everyone.
I first heard about Joey through, some friends of mine that have tinnitus. We have chats, and somebody suggested that I pick up Joey's book and that it was very helpful for them, and they thought that it might be helpful for me. She's got a book called Rock Steady. It's not just a book, it's also a program. And a lot more than just tinnitus and vertigo. Joey has a background in psychology, in neuroscience, in cognitive behavioral therapy. Um, you have a master of vestibular audiology. You have
Mm.
20 plus years of experience in yoga and in the art of experiential neuroplasticity. That is a mouthful. You are a very busy woman. If you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, give me a little bit of background about you and how tinnitus
Mhm.
and or vertigo has affected your life and how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah. Well, where I'm at today is I'm Joey, and I say that in a meaningful way that that's the label I go by. Um, and in many ways, that's a political message that I'm not my degrees, I'm not my neurodivergence, I'm not my symptoms, I'm not even my gender, I'm not my race or my family bloodline. I'm Joey. And I dream of a world where we all go by our first names.
Mm.
And we show deep interest in our diversity and humanity. So it's really nice to meet you, Tamara.
It's so nice to meet you, Joey.
So I was always a bit of a deeply curious person, quite naturally confident. Uh, I'm learning, you
Mm.
know, and I would say always deeply connected to my body in unusual ways. And so from a very young age, I was kind of able to advocate for myself and speak up and follow what I now call my body compass. And this is what I train people in. How do I listen to the wisdom of the body and follow the body as a compass? So all of that came quite naturally to me, but there is a price you pay for being someone who follows their own instinct, right? Well, actually, I found yoga at age 15, and that really helped me because being in my body and breathing made sense. That was like, okay, now I'm finally home. You know, the outside world is a bit crazy and doesn't make sense to me. Um, but yoga made sense. And also, I had a natural capacity and curiosity towards subtle detail. And yoga goes into that subtle detail beyond what is seen, what we feel and sense and intuit. The five koshas in the yogic traditions. I was reading about that, right? So anyway, that's my teenage years. 20s, I got really stuck into my psychology, my vestibular audiology, my training, my profession, my career, but I really got to this burnout point where I just couldn't function meaningfully in hospital systems, in social circles. And that was when my tinnitus and dizziness really ramped up. It was like my body was just going, none of this makes sense. I don't belong here. Like, like help, 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 help. But of course, I had no medical issues. But my body would somaticize, which means all of this emotional and psychological distress would it would express as a physical symptom. And for me, that would be things like asthma, migraine, tinnitus, or vertigo.
And you had all those things at the same time?
Throughout my life, right? And so I
Okay.
was constantly navigating this push-pull of why am I like this? What's wrong with me? So I held a lot of shame in my body. I had a lot of internal dialogue about I'm abnormal, I'm wrong, there is something wrong with me. And it's really been that lifetime of self-compassion, self-kindness, befriending myself, and just slowly learning to shift the narrative towards actually there's nothing wrong with me. I may be different, Um, but there's still a place for me in this world.
Mm.
And in my late 20s, I really got to that breaking point, which many of your listeners are possibly in or navigating or close to. And the breaking point was really, do I just suicide and opt out? Because
Mm.
this world is not built for me. I'm done, right? So that was the breaking point. It was like a real dark night of the soul. Or do I try and live differently? Around turning 30, I had to go through a lot of self-inquiry. I had sexual abuse that I didn't even know I had. It was all suppressed and not spoken about and not recognized. So I had that work to do. Um, I had a huge amount of confusion around friendships and who my people are and who I am. That, find your kind. What the hell does that mean, right? So I had a lot of getting to know myself work to do. And the tinnitus and the vertigo, while real physical symptoms, okay, I'm not making it up and I'm not crazy, they're real physical expressions that's changing my physiology. They were my body's way of saying, hang on a minute, turn your attention inwards and listen to me. No one's listening to me. No one's taking care of me. No one's there for me. And so I had to learn through my 30s how to become that best friend and how to become compassionate and empathic to my own experience instead of consistently gaslighting my own experience to be what other people needed me to be to soothe their emotions.
That resonates with me because when my tinnitus started, which I'm going on 3 years now,
Hmm.
when it first started, I was under the impression that it was a result of a physical head trauma. And the
Hmm.
reason I thought that was because like the proximity to when I hit my head and when the tinnitus started was like about a month and a half. So I kind of just put those two things together. Later on, after doing a little bit of work, somebody said to me, I think your tinnitus is a result of stress, things that you're holding in, things that you've not yet resolved. And I
Mm.
got so angry because I was like, what do you know? Like, what do you mean? Like, but the more I thought about it, I was like, the anger, the frustration, the pain, the all of the things that I'm feeling as a result of my tinnitus, all those feelings
Mm.
were already there. I just
Mm-hmm.
addressed them. So I understand. I totally feel what you're saying about
Yeah.
the emotional piece.
Emotional, it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and we cannot disentangle those. So every physical sensation we feel, whether it's a tight shoulder, an upset belly, a tight throat, a tinnitus, a vertigo, a dizziness, and anything, any physical sensation has a story,
Mm,
right? Has some mental dialogue going on, has an emotional component, and has a spirituality, which for me, the spirituality is what am I connecting to in this moment? Am I giving my power away to the doctor, the therapist, the friend, the partner, the employer? Am I trying to get someone else to rescue me and fix me? Even God, right? We could give our power away to some religious being in an unhealthy way. That can be done in a very healthy way. And, so this is the questioning. So I've got this physical feeling in my body. How am I in relationship to that feeling?
mm,
And what I teach people, not only in Rocksteady, but also in my new program, Sensing Ground, is how to be in relationship with the physical sensation at its direct contact.
mm,
How do I empty the story that doesn't belong, the story that says I'm abnormal, I'm not enough, I should be better than everybody else can heal their tinnitus, why can't I? I'm clearly a failure, right? How do I empty that story and rewrite a new story? So I'm actually hooking onto that sensation with a story that says, I've got this. I'm strong enough to feel through this. I can breathe through this. You know, I trust my body will bio-complete this process because I know myself. I know that in this moment, I'm learning how to love myself more because it's easy to love myself when things feel juicy and sensual and warm, right? That's easy. It's not work. The
yeah.
oxytocin's there. But when I'm in self-hatred mode and I feel that thing that generates that self-hate story again and again, can I learn to build the muscle of loving myself when it's hard? And as I build that self-love, I generate more oxytocin, more dopamine, more serotonin, more endorphins. I change my physiology. I build new neural maps and I hook them onto that sensation. I change my experience. So we become active participants in how we neurologically wire ourselves.
Mm,
That's experiential neuroplasticity. And the tinnitus is really just the alarm clock. So for some people, it's dry lips, itchy head, scratchy throat, digestive issues. We all have our somatics, but for most of the people who follow me, it's some kind of chronic pain, chronic anxiety, chronic tinnitus, chronic dizziness, chronic imbalance, chronic vertigo. Combinations of those are how it's expressing. And I'm helping people to be in relationship with their body and to use their body biomarkers and signals as healthy, valuable information, not as symptoms or problems that need to be fixed. So it's a radical reframing
yeah.
of the situation.
I think what I struggle with, and I know a lot of tinnitus sufferers struggle with, is we hear about this kind of concept a lot. Like as I was going through Rocksteady, one thing that really resonated with me was this overarching idea of like, you have to be the thing that you want to achieve. You have to outwardly express things in your life if you want those things to be real. I think what at the point that I'm at, I can only speak for me. Like, how do I know that I want to feel good? I know that I want to be happy. I know that I want to be less frustrated. I want to be in less pain and I want to be less irritated by my tinnitus. And I know that there are steps that I can walk through that are going to help me get there. But how do you maintain that optimism and that positivity when you're in the moment feeling so much pain or
Yeah.
frustration? Like it's really hard to be consistent in being positive when you just when you're feeling it so much, when the
Yeah.
tinnitus physically hurts or it's so loud that you can't hear past it. I find it difficult to stay in that positive frame of mind when I'm going through so
Yeah.
much. It's hard.
Yeah. So this is really the crux of what I teach. And so I think Tamara's referring to the book, Rock Steady,
Mm-hmm.
and the book is a drop in the ocean.
Yeah.
The program is the meat.
Mm,
The reason I built the Rock Steady program is because I was noticing how limited it was for me to help people if they visited me once a week, once a fortnight for a session.
yeah.
They needed me on their shoulder 24/7. That was the truth of it. They needed me in their ear being like, you can do this.
Yeah.
You can breathe through this.
Yeah.
This tinnitus signal belongs to you. It's made for you. Open up to it.
Mm-hmm.
Invite it in for a cup of tea.
Mm-hmm.
This is your signal. What is this signal? They literally needed me on their shoulder to help them build these neural maps, but I couldn't. It's not logistically possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I made a program that they could have 24/7. So my clients have me in their ear 24/7. Whenever they need that reminder, they click play. And there's all those different options of am I in panic? All right, go to the panic section. Am I feeling brain fog and disconnected? Okay, go to that. Like, am I needing to some strategies and tips to connect to myself? Go to that. So they've got a smorgasbord of options to help them meet that difficult moment. Because the one certainty we have is change, variety, and flux. We're all living in cycles, just like the weather. So we need a toolkit. What I believe, I didn't know this at the time, by the way, but what I see now is Rocksteady invites people into a cultural immersion. They are coming into a new paradigm where suddenly they're the authority, they're the expert, and they know what they want and what they need.
Yeah.
Rocksteady just simply reminds them that on repeat. Without Rocksteady, they're in a world that confuses them with devices, techniques, advice, guidance, and it's pulling them out of themselves on repeat, which further depletes their energy, further exhausts them, and gets them further away from what they want. Because what every person wants is to make sense of themselves. So you want to know, why do I feel this tinnitus? When I know why I feel it and what I can do about it, I experience inner peace. It's that simple. When we make sense of our inner world, at last,
Mm,
the only person who can make sense of your inner world is Tamara.
yeah.
The only person who can make sense of my inner world is Joey. And what Rocksteady and Sensing Ground do is they hold this container of being like, yeah, it makes sense you're confused. Yeah, it makes sense you have no idea what your body's doing. And yeah, it makes sense you're a bit disconnected to your body compass. That's okay.
Yeah.
Let's take the time to get to know what our body's saying and what that means to us.
Yeah.
It's a personal relationship building process that most of the world is pulling us out. And we need the skills to go in, be sensitive, be kind, be unconditionally accepting, and to have the skill set to make sense of what's going on in this internal chaos, which is how it starts. It's chaotic.
Is that why body scanning is so important?
Yes.
Can you just explain a little bit for those people listening what exactly body scanning is and why it might be helpful for tinnitus and vertigo?
I think it's essential. I truly do. After all these years and all these people who I have seen recover fully, I firmly believe it's essential. When we experience any kind of trauma, and for many tinnitus, dizziness, vertigo, or pain sufferers, their body signals are traumatic. The actual signal their body's giving them triggers a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. You can think about trauma as like, oh, there's a saber-toothed tiger around the corner. Ugh, fear, right? The body, whoa. And so we go into this, God, do I run? Do I attack it? Do I freeze and play dead? Or do I try and befriend the tiger? So, body scanning is the opposite of a trauma response. Trauma is disconnecting from our eight senses for reasons, right? For life-threatening reasons. It's a good thing. But when we live in a disconnected state where we're not connected to our eight senses, touch, taste, smell, sight, smell, sound, interoceptive bodily cues, emotions, hunger, taste, thirst, hot, cold, vestibular, movement and balance signals, acceleration, deceleration, stopping, starting, rocking, swaying, and proprioception. And I think the final two are the most important. Proprioception is our orientation and location of ourselves. So where are my shoulders? Where are my feet? Where are my elbows? Where are my ears? Where am I in space and time? Location, orientation. Where am I pointed? Where am I directed? So I teach people how to really boost their vestibular and proprioceptive senses. Why? Because when you have more healthy vestibular signals and proprioception signals, you almost instantly get emotional stability. Body scanning helps your body go, right, I'm just going to notice where my hips are. I'm going to notice the sensations of my feet on the floor. I'm going to wiggle my toes. I might move my shoulders. You're not thinking about it. You're actually receiving these signals, which is an afferent signal coming up. The brain is receiving signals from the body. And what happens is the brain, the emotional centers go, okay, well, I'm not wet, so there's no flood. I'm not super, super hot and burning, so there's no fire. I'm not shaking, so there's no earthquake. It actually goes through a life-threatening analysis and it goes, I'm sitting on a chair in a room with no life-threatening situations. And at some very primitive level, the brain just goes, false alarm. Because the anxiety is like a false alarm loop that's like probably more likely going, I'm abnormal, there's something wrong with me, the tribe's going to reject me, I'm going to be thrown out, and this is life-threatening. I'm fear of rejection, fear of not belonging, fear of not being safe. What I teach my clients through the eight senses and body scanning is to cultivate their own internal safety. It's a neurological signal that my body knows I am safe. Tinnitus people are living in that disconnected place. All the activities up here in the midbrain, in the limbic system, in the emotional system, in the reptilian brain, and they're disconnected from their actual direct experience of the environment. Re-engaging that has to come through the body scan. The body scan is literally observing sensations. All sensations come through those 8 senses, so it includes emotional stuff. Um, but your classics of what are you touching, what are you smelling, what are you tasting, what are you hearing, not only in yourself, but in the traffic, in the birds, in the trees, all of that. What are we seeing? And not just seeing in terms of the beauty of pattern recognition and just aesthetics around us, right? There's a lot to see that calms us. There's a lot to see that can trigger us. So we have to learn, how do I use my senses to cultivate safety? But
Mm.
it's also when you close your eyes in a body scan, what are you seeing in your mind's eye? Some people have aphantasia, which means they don't see anything, but most people will actually see images or memories or visions or symbols, and all of that is fuel for developing this internal safety, connection, and belonging.
How important is it not just to go through the motions? With neuroplasticity, you can do all sorts of exercises, but how important is it to actually believe that it's true and that it's going to work and not just to go through the physical motions of doing things? How important is it that you actually believe it's going to work for you?
That's such an interesting question. I mean, the answer is it's essential
Yeah.
because believing is that spiritual layer. Remember, you can't pull apart the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. It's all happening at the one time, whether you're aware of it or not. For someone who doesn't believe and is just religiously, let's say, just spinning or body scanning, or if they're not actually connected to the sense and not actually smelling the rose and actually, so when you smell the rose and it potentially brings in that pleasure, the whole body relaxes and actually gets a nervous system relaxation response, which releases certain neurochemicals. If they're smelling the rose and being like, Joey told me to smell a rose,
Mm,
and the internal state is, this is such bullshit, their body is neurochemically releasing stress.
yeah.
They're not getting the experiential. They're still in the head. They're not in the body. So there's a surrender that happens. And I often say to people, go through, like read the book or absorb all of my free resources and see if you're ready, because to actually body scan is literally like learning to scuba dive. You got to want to do it.
Yeah.
You got to want to do it.
The reason I ask that is because, and I'm thinking of a person in particular, when you have tinnitus, no matter how bad it is, some people obviously have it worse than others. But
Mm.
when you're stuck in that loop and you're in fight or flight all the time, and someone says to you, I have this great resource, and she said, if you body scan, this, it's going to help you, or your tinnitus is going to reduce, or you're going to feel better. And they're like, great, I'm going to start body scanning every single day. But they're really not doing it. They're doing it, but they're not taking,
Being.
they're in
There's a
so
difference
pain,
between,
it's hard for them to really sink into it and do it properly. Like, I guess what I'm trying to get at is it's not enough to go through the motions. You really have to,
it
you
needs to be
have to
trauma
believe,
sen
yeah,
it needs to be trauma sensitive, and people need guides. If you can do this alone, you do it alone. It's no big deal. You're not even listening to this talk, right? You're not Googling it. You're not reading my books. You've nailed it. You're in your body. You're content. You're doing it. It's when there's a fracture in our relationship to ourselves and we don't have that self-trust. I know one of my mantras has been, maybe it's okay. Like maybe this right here is okay. And if I repeat that statement in my mind, it doesn't matter what's going on in my inner world. It's like, well, maybe this is okay. This is me now, so this is unique and personal. It's not prescriptive cookie cutter. But I notice that when I know where my hips and shoulders are, but this is proprioception, this is locating and orienting my body. When I sense and feel the relative position of my shoulders and hips, so is my left shoulder above my left hip, or forwards of it, or behind it, or over here, right? When I know the relative location of my hips and shoulders, my body is centered. Or for my body scan, I might go, okay, I'm just going to focus on the position of my shoulders and my hips because I know that centers me. So we can have tricks and tools that help cultivate that step-by-step trust in the body.
What would you say to somebody who has absolutely no idea where to start?
Um, I'd say that's okay. And a beginner's mind is really good actually too.
Mm,
Um, I would say be hopeful. I would say I've seen many, many people with even 20, 30 years of chronic, persistent, relentless, quote unquote, incurable symptoms. I've seen them heal and recover. And I would say let it be simple. I mean, the body scan is a simple thing. So I would say let it be simple and it really needs to be enjoyable. If we don't have the
mm,
joy and pleasure, we're literally reinforcing the fear and anxiety. So there is no should, there is
mm,
no doing, there is no religious repeating. The process of neuroplasticity is actually coming back into I'm the expert here. So if you're not feeling like whatever you're doing is right for you, it's 100% not right for you.
yeah.
So really learning to trust your own intuitive body signals that not quite right means not quite right yet. So you keep exploring and experimenting until you find what works. So yeah, I would say there's a lot of hope.
Mm,
Um, and at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, am I going to believe in myself and my body? Or am I going to give my power away and ask somebody else to fix me? And my job is to always keep people choosing themselves.
yeah. Does that include, I mean, with neuroplasticity, is it important if you are trying to heal whatever it is? Like, I mean, we're talking about tinnitus, but is it important to be consistent?
Um, Look, neuroplasticity works within the cycles of life. So just like any living system, human beings are living systems, there's high energy times and low energy times. So the only thing to be consistent about is turning our attention in towards our actual experience
Yeah.
and tending to and nurturing what's really there, not gaslighting ourselves, not looking in the mirror and going, I love you, you're strong, when you don't actually believe that, right? That's just gaslighting yourself. So it's learning to be authentic. And sometimes it's nourishing to have a day on the couch and to
Mm,
not see people and not talk to people. It's like that's just what we want. So there are cycles we're in where the only consistent thing would be that I'm true to myself. But if I'm really true to myself, I'll enter a life of a huge amount of variety where I'm moving like the weather.
if you don't mind, there's a couple of points in the book that just personally resonated with me.
Hmm.
And I wanted to just read them and maybe discuss a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
When we stop running away or pushing through what we feel, we create space for neuroplasticity to take place. Instead of fighting what we feel, we lean in and kindly support what we feel. We go through it without drama and stress. We change our neural patterns and return to feeling at ease by approaching situations with a different perspective. When I read that, I exhaled. I felt like
Mm.
I was holding my breath and I read that paragraph and I exhaled. Because what I take from that is it's natural to fight, to push. It feels that way anyway. It feels natural to fight, to push,
Yeah.
to run from something that's scary and not sit in it.
Yeah.
And sitting in it is the only way to get through it. But it's
That's
scary to sit.
yes. And that circles back to your original question, which I can answer or respond to because these are life skills. You know, not many people have a really well developed window of tolerance, which means they are able to remain present with the neurological arousal levels of daily life. Most of us at some point are like, whoa, too much, tuning out, open the fridge, get a drink, distract, numb, avoid. call a friend, anything but this. I don't
Yeah.
want to feel this, right?
Yeah.
So we're learning how to build our window of tolerance, to broaden our bandwidth, to be able to be present with more neurological firing. This is physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And to actually stay present and body scan through these edges, these thresholds of discomfort and unknown. That's exactly what we're learning to do as we develop our maturity with body scanning. It literally starts in the beginning with just learning to feel again. Like people are like, I didn't even know how to body scan. Do I massage myself? How do I feel? So they're learning how to feel, full stop.
Yeah.
Once they've mastered that and got into that and come back into themselves and built up a bit of a relationship there, then you can really deepen it.
Yeah.
And what we want to do is to be able to stay present with our body basically 24/7, which means while I'm in relationship with you and talking with you, I have part of my attention on my body and I'm feeling you. I'm receiving this conversation. I'm connected to the experience in real time. I'm not 100% merged with you, leaving myself and disconnected from my experience and sort of fully entering into your world or performing to be what you want. I have attention on you and attention on me, and I call that dual attention. And that's a skill we're building to be embodied as we're experiencing the world.
Yeah.
And that allows us to bio-complete our experiences. So trauma is undigested life experience. It's experience that I was like, whoa, okay, or I'm here with Tamara, and whoop, she said something that's a bit abrasive for me, a bit difficult, so I'll just shut that down. I'll suppress it away and I'll smile and keep going.
Mm.
But if I can stay present with it, even when it gets perhaps a bit edgy or a bit the arousal state of my body is going up and up. If I can breathe through that and stay present with that, I'm actually digesting it as we're talking. So these are things that we're learning to do in baby bite-sized pieces, and these skills come with us into daily life. However, it's a muddy road and some relationships will crumble and fall.
Yeah.
You're nodding. Tamara's nodding.
Yeah, because I mean, it goes into exactly what I was just the next passage that I was gonna read about vulnerability. Um, it says here, for many people with vertigo or tinnitus who have experienced traumatic sensations in their body, it is likely that this emotional threat area of the brain is hypersensitive and alert to danger more than previously. This results in more automated anxiety reactions in daily life. Many people with vertigo or tinnitus associate anxiety and feelings of dread or vulnerability with their symptoms. Learning to retrain these automated responses is a large part of your healing.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like when I read it, it all makes so much sense to me, but I feel like it's always that way. Like I can read this and go, yep, uh-huh, yep, exactly. This is exactly how I feel. But putting this into action, making this happen in real life,
Yeah.
reaching that healing is not easy. It's those in between parts that are so difficult for me.
Can I speak to this?
Yeah, for sure.
You can't do it alone.
Yeah.
And take it from someone who's tried. I'm this is pretty much I think my life learning. If you take that kind of karmic approach to life, there's only so much we can do alone. And neurologically speaking, a lot of our healing is relational. So it takes another person. And for many people that I work with, there's this high sensitivity and like you could call it neurocomplexity, where what they're experiencing and what's happening in their inner world is really hard for them to find another human being who gets it. So when they may be so brave and reveal something that's real about themselves, they're met with discomfort or dismissal or not being believed. So that's my life. It's like I have tried and tried and tried and tried to be vulnerable and real, but I'm met with, what, are you a unicorn? Right? So it's like this constant clash and dissonance. And the brain's like, okay, it's not okay to be me. And then it reinforces all of that hyper arousal and anxiety and those automated stress responses. So, yes, we have to be kind and befriend ourselves. That's essential. Otherwise,
Mm.
we end up in the loony house. Like, we literally end up with some pretty serious mental discombobulations. But not only befriending ourselves, we need to find another human who can be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense to me. Kind of get
Mm.
that. And then our brain goes, oh, I'm not alone.
Yeah,
So the communities I develop give that space to people where they can be real about what they're experiencing and there's common ground. There's other real human beings who are like, yeah, I've had that. Relate, hard relate, got your back. And so
yeah,
we enter this community of human beings that are relatable. And then neurologically speaking, we're experiencing neural mirroring, validation, acceptance. We're getting just a little bit more me too, instead of always feeling alone and isolated. Um, and we drown in privacy when we do it alone. The
yeah,
shame builds up, and there is just a level of healing that gets kind of roadblocked if we drown in that privacy and isolation. We need a community of other people who we can just simply share our wins with, share our struggles with, and be in relationship with.
yeah.
And I have that through the Rocksteady and Sensing Ground Community Hub with live monthly calls. That's actually 2 or 3 times a month. Sometimes I offer small group calls, which are intimate and really, really powerful.
Mm.
Because all of these things you're talking about, the in situ, in real life neuroplasticity happening, you need people who are on your shoulder, going through it side by side. So there's that understanding and motivation and the
Yeah,
fine tuning. But the free Facebook groups, that's a little different because if you just let any man and his dog bang on about vertigo and tinnitus and pain and suffering, all you get is this viral negativity. So in that free group, we have rules about only post about how neuroplasticity is supporting you. So every single post is about support and sort of proactive wins. And that's to psychologically keep it safe.
yeah,
Once you're in the program and you're learning, then we have sort of an open share and people share more vulnerably, but in a healthy way. So it's really, really getting that mirroring. And I also hear a lot people will say, "Oh my God, Tamara just asked this question, and I didn't even know I had that question, but when she asked it, I was like, whoa, I needed to hear that." So there's this sort of layers of learning that we mirror each other in ways that we really can't do alone because we're like, I didn't even know I had that question.
yeah,
So this is where you get the collective healing each other.
yeah. I feel like when I started my YouTube channel, I honestly did it selfishly. I did it as just a way of expression because I knew that maybe my family and friends were like sick of hearing about it and they didn't really get what I was going through. And I thought, you know what, if I just start making these little videos about how I feel, like it's going to be cathartic for me. What I didn't
Hmm.
expect is
Beautiful.
what happened is all these people reaching out to me. They found my Instagram or they, emailed me or whatever, just like, hey, I saw your video, you know, my symptoms are exactly the same as yours. I know exactly what you're talking about when you say this thing. Or the support that I have found through doing this has been the best part of it. I've made like,
Mm.
lifelong friendships. Like, it's been amazing,
Beautiful.
that understanding that when you talk to somebody and they know what you're going through without you having to explain it, that is priceless.
It's invigorating.
It really is. And that is when I feel like my real healing actually started.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And you know what? You brought yourself out of your own kind of that privacy and isolation. And that's the beauty of the internet, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I have a similar story in a sense because I have no professional peers. And so a lot of my YouTube and podcast was like, well, I just want to talk about this stuff and no one else wants to talk about it. So I'll just
Yeah.
talk to the world and see if anyone's interested with me because, I don't want people at home suffering because these are not incurable. That is
Yeah.
the biggest myth. It's not factual. Everything is reversible, and it comes down to our relationship to our body. And doctors have zero training in that, zero. This is not a medical specialty. This is how you relate to your bodily sensations.
Yeah.
And we need support to learn that if it doesn't come naturally.
There's one last piece that I want to read. This is probably one of my favorite excerpts in the book. Um, by focusing on what you desire to feel, you teach your brain to allocate more neural activity to this neural network. By feeling what you want to feel daily, you can reset your brain and body to feel normal again. And in doing so, the more you feel normal, the less you will be focused on feeling symptoms. You can learn how to weaken the connections between neurons that fire messages resulting in your symptoms. You do this by not worrying about them or prioritizing them. I invite you to stop trying to get rid of them, as this feeds the neural firing of your symptoms. I mean, I invite you to stop trying to get rid of them. Like for 3 years, that's all I tried to do. I was so focused on just trying to get rid of it. Like that's all I wanted more than anything. And everything I did was to try to get rid of it. There
Yeah,
wasn't
and
any
that's
work
that's the
being done.
culture.
Yeah, and that when
That's
I
that's
read
the
that, I was like,
culture.
holy smokes, there's so much more here. It is more than just trying to get rid of it.
Yeah. So sometimes I use, I don't know if you're listening to the video or the podcast, but I'm holding my hands up like a seesaw at a children's playground. And having our pain and our fear and our symptoms is one end of the seesaw, and having our joy, pleasure, and desired sensations is at the other end of the seesaw.
Yeah.
And so when we're focused on symptoms, we are literally keeping the seesaw up in the favor of the symptoms, the fear, and the pain. Every time we use a device, every time we see a therapist, every time we try a technique for that symptom, right? If you body scan for your symptom and your pain, you're kind of you're setting the priority that this is what it's all about. So you're keeping that neural allocation really high. But if I body scan saying I really just want to feel steady and centered, it has nothing to do with my pain, my tinnitus, this. I'm going to body scan. I feel my shoulders, I feel my hips, I find my center, and there I am. And I'm allocating all of this neural attention into my desired sensation of steadiness and centering. And what do you know? The pain and symptoms go down because there's no attention there. There's no neurological attention. And the steadiness and centering sensations and feelings and emotions and stories, they go up. And so the brain rearranges where it places attention because I'm directing it like a volume control. So healing any unwanted sensation is attentional. And
Mm.
we need attention skills. And the body scan is what teaches us those attentional skills. So we need to spend time feeling what we feel in a relaxed state, not a fear state. And what I teach people is to learn how to direct loving attention inward toward themselves, which is a skill in and of itself, to get more of that oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, get that neurochemistry going while they're in relationship with their tinnitus. Can you direct loving attention toward the tinnitus? You're not getting rid of it, you're embracing it, you're opening up into it. And then you bring all eight senses along. So it's like, yeah, okay, I've got the tinnitus sound, but can I also taste something? Can I smell something? Can I feel my shoulders and hips? Can I balance on one leg? Can I direct this kind of playful, loving energy to disperse the neural activity? If the activity's all caught up in the tinnitus and the fear, it's like really concentrated, which leads to pain. But if I distribute it through my eight senses, what do you know? It expands throughout the whole body and it shifts. It's like suddenly the tinnitus pain is not really there, and the neurological attention moves into a head to toe, whole body experience. When we share the neurological load, instead of concentrating at where the pain is and keeping the attention there, like, oh, get rid of it, I hate it, get rid of it, I hate it. It's all there, contracted in that point. It's a little bit like having, let's say, 30 football players and only two players are using the ball. Only two players. So they get exhausted and pain. But if you spread the play with all 30 players and the ball's moving amongst all of them, they're sharing the load and nobody's experiencing as much exhaustion or pain. So it's the same, I think, neurologically, that once we bring in all 8 senses, we distribute the neurological allocation. So Sense and Ground is my new book and my new program, and that really talks more about pleasure and pain, sensuality, how we can move through dark soul of the night and the richest, deepest suicidality and huge orgasmic states. So really looking at the nature of deep, real human experience and how do we explore that? How do we open up into it? How to be intimate with ourselves and others. So it's really touching into a broader conversation. And a lot of people get to those places because of tinnitus and
Wow.
dizziness and vertigo. So it's like, how can we turn this incurable symptom, which it's not an incurable symptom, but that's where it starts, right? How
Yeah.
can we turn that horrible experience into a life-changing orgasmic state
Yeah.
where it's rich and there are gifts and we are learning and we are on an inner journey that takes us to new places that is enriching. That's that's really where we're getting to.
How, if somebody's interested in Rocksteady or in Sensing Ground, how do they find you?
Seekingbalance.com.au is my website, my workplace. And from there, there's a free starter kit. Um, we've got our Facebook group, which is free for people to join if you wish. And yeah, I offer many online programs, and you can get in touch with me. If you're unsure about my programs or just want to meet me, I have 15-minute free calls for people who sometimes they're like, I just want to check you're a human. Are you real? Um, so yeah, but yeah, reading my book, Rocksteady and Sensing Ground will be released January 2026. So
Oh,
it's still a ways away.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joey. This really means a lot to me because I really just want to share what I learn. And I don't want to ever be a gatekeeper of any of this good information. Um, I
Hmm.
appreciate your kindness. I appreciate you. You know, I reached out to you on Instagram out of nowhere. You didn't know me at all. And you, I think it was not even an hour you responded. You're like, sure, I will. And it was just like, just thank you for being here. Thank you for being such a lovely human being. Thank you for sharing what you've learned. And, you know, if anybody's interested in getting in touch with Joey, please do so. Her book is amazing. I did the 7-day program of Rocksteady. Um, it is super helpful because it forces you to be a little bit more introspective and not so outward. And I think people who have tinnitus are still, we're always like this. So I think this is a huge piece that not enough people know about. And
Yeah.
I appreciate you bringing it to the forefront because it's been super, super helpful for me.
Yeah. And I would say if anyone's, really bothered by their bodily sensations and it's holding you back in any way, whether that's in relationships or career or your own sense of well-being, health and happiness, do the program. This is not this is not something you want to muck around with.
Yeah, agreed.
The program is a cultural immersion. It's kind of like going, you know what, I really want to learn Spanish. I'm just going to go and spend time in Spain. I'm not going to read a book. I'm not going to do an app. I'm going to go to Spain. The program is the immersion, um, and it makes all the difference. It makes all the difference.
Yeah.
It's a paradigm shift.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Joy. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, so lovely to meet you. Thank
Yeah,
you for
lovely to
inviting
meet
me.
you too. Of course. And anytime. I'll see ya.
Bye bye to all the listeners.
Bye.